we'll have the next set. This is a set of ladies, Jane Borges and Sheena Maria Piedade. Please come. They will give us a presentation on how Catholic migrants from the Konkan shaped neighbourhoods of South Mumbai. How Catholic migrants from the Konkan shaped the neighbourhoods of South Mumbai. Jane Borges, let them know who's Jane Borges. Jane Borges? Jane, raise your hand. Jane Borges and Sheena Maria. Now, the ladies are involved in what is the project known as Soboicar. That's right, where is it? Soboicar Project, where they are archiving testimonies and interviews. Let me share this. I'm a little proud of it. She came and interviewed me to have me on her archival collection. So they are doing that. It's very valuable work for historians. We as historians think it's a very valuable work. So let us, with excitement, look forward to this paper. Jane and Sheena.
Good afternoon. I'm Jane Borges, and that's my colleague Sheena Maria Piedade. We're both the co-founders of Soboicar, which is an oral archive. We've been chronicling the stories of Catholic families from the Konkan who live in South Mumbai. We have a series of slides today where we will take you through the 2 years of research material and archival material that we've gathered through people we've interviewed. But before that, I'd like to talk a little about Soboicar. We both are not academics. I'm a journalist, and Sheena is an arts facilitator and writer. But we're very interested in archiving, and so I'll just talk a little bit about this project and how the idea for it came about. In Mumbai, like elsewhere in India, Catholic churches have always been the nucleus of Christian neighborhoods. The establishment of a church usually cements the foundation for a parish and then parishioners, and thereby has fostered the growth for a healthy community of faithfuls. These faithfuls who usually live within the vicinity of the church, even today and even back then, were not bound by only religion but also tradition, food and culture. The native Christians of Mumbai, the East Indians, played a pivotal role in centering faith and community in different pockets of Mumbai, Bombay. But in the mid-1800s, actually early 1800s and 1900s, there was also an influx of migrants from the Konkan region, particularly Portuguese-ruled Goa, and that too in very large numbers. While some of these new migrants saw the city as an in-between or a connection point between the native lands from where they came in the Konkan and the places they traveled to for work, which was usually outside of India, most settled in Bombay, got jobs here, set up businesses and made the city their home. They carried with them multiple histories, a new language, Konkani, and different versions and dialects of this language, and often a shared colonial legacy. For the Goans, it was the Portuguese legacy, which also was something they shared with the East Indians here. Their arrival marked a significant rise in the Catholic demographic in Bombay and spawned the building of new churches, expansion of existing Catholic neighborhoods, and the emergence of newer ones. In the original island city, which stretched from Colaba to Mahim, there were several such new Catholic pockets. Its residents made important contributions, especially in the field of education, medicine, governance, city building, and also became cultural carriers, shaping and influencing the arts, the music, the theatre, the théâtre as we know it, food, sports, among others. Over the last few decades, however, and unfortunately, these neighborhoods and residents have slowly been disappearing from the city's consciousness. The primary reason for this is the diminishing Catholic population, mainly because of the preference to migrate abroad. And I'm talking about the diminishing Konkan Catholic population and the redevelopment of the neighborhoods and the increasingly unaffordable housing, which has pushed many families to the suburbs, usually also outside city limits. A clearly visible outcome of this is many churches lying vacant. Several parishes have been struggling with fewer masses being held in the week, and little or no funds to maintain the church and support those involved in its upkeep. The decline has been particularly noticeable in the last 2 decades. Our oral visual memory archive project, Soboicar, which alludes to the word Bomoikar, which is a Konkani name given to the Bombay Goans, emerged out of a personal curiosity. I'm a journalist and author, and my family hails from Karwar, Mangalore, and Goa, and I currently live in Kavel in Kalbadevi. My colleague, artist, writer, and arts therapist, Sheena Maria Piedade's family comes from Goa and has an ancestral home in the nearby Dabul, where her grandmother grew up in a building which her family members still live. Both Kavel and Dabul are within shouting distance of each other and were once massive parishes, but today suffer the fate of being forgotten as the Catholic population here has dropped by half and even more. Sheena and I felt an urgent need to preserve the social, religious, and cultural identities and practices of these dwindling neighbourhoods. We found a mentor in Malvika Bhatia, who's in the audience today, and was already leading an oral history archive. Malvika, can you please raise your hand? Her oral history archive is called the Citizens Archive of India, and she decided to partner with our project and also mentor us through this, actually handhold us through this. Even before we began, we were aware that an archival endeavour of this nature had to be well defined to encapsulate the stories we were in search of. So while we would have loved to document the stories of all the different Catholic communities of Bombay, and this is something we get asked about a lot, we decided to restrict the scope of the project to the Catholics in the Konkan and focus only on their migration story. It helped that both of us belong to this region and were familiar with the Konkani language. Geographically too, as Soboicars ourselves, we chose to concentrate on the south and central parts of the city because this is where most of the migrants had initially settled, in Dhobitalau, Kavel, Baikala, Mazgaon, Kolaba, before moving to the suburbs. As part of the project, we've been documenting the life stories of Catholics who once resided or continue to reside in South Mumbai through extensive video interviews and archiving of material memory, particularly personal photographs. Over the last 2 years, we have done close to 30 hours of video interviews, both online and offline, with people living in Mumbai, Oman, Canada, Goa, and even Portugal. I've named states and countries. Some of our interviewees include former India hockey player Vivian Gaudet, ex-Air India Managing Director Michael Mascarenas, former politician and corporator Rocky Crasto, senior journalist Antoine Lewis, historian, educationist and researcher Dr. Kranti Kiran Farais, among many others. Our oldest interviewee yet is 90-year-old Genevieve D'Souza, who continues, by the way, to serve as Eucharistic Minister at St. Francis Xavier's Church in Dabul. In archiving the disappearing stories of those who lived as Soboicars, we hope to understand why some of them left and a few others stayed, and how they influenced the complexion of these spaces that they inhabited. In doing so, we are also trying to create a portrait of a community from Western India that once made the city of Mumbai their home. In the following slides, which some of the first few slides, Sheena will be leading you through it. We will be taking you through archival photos and sketches shared by some of our interviewees who, through church life, community interactions, celebrations, and their professions, shaped the neighborhoods that they belong to. And that's also the theme of our presentation today, which is how Catholic migrants from the Konkan shaped the neighborhoods of South Mumbai. Sheena, please.
Thank you, but we have lots to go. So we'll start here by looking at some of these portraits and what they have to do with the church. Our presentation is very visual, so I hope you enjoy some of these photos. In the first one, we have Genevieve D'Souza and John D'Souza celebrating their wedding at the St. Xavier's Church in Dabul, which is my parish, in 1960. They were born and raised in Kalangu, and Genevieve met her husband John, a resident of Dabul, in October 59. A neighbor of Genevieve's mother had arranged the match. The couple had stayed in touch with each other through letters before they were married 7 months later. Here we see the wedding mass that was held at 10 a.m. and Monsignor Basilio Pinto led the nuptials. He was the parish priest of the church then and also was close to Genevieve's husband's family. They also celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in 2010, and their son, Father Cletus de Souza, led it. Here we have Father Bonnie de Cunha leading the choir at the wedding of Hazel Martis and Dr. Charles Pinto at St. Ignatius Church in 1978. Dr. Charles was a renowned psychiatrist who, despite a hectic work schedule, made time for church-related activities, including the parish choir where he sang some solos. Later in his life, he contributed a lot to psychiatric awareness. Every Sunday, he would find himself in a different church, Victoria Church, Mount Mary, Mount Carmel, and volunteering at homes for the aged, working with the nuns to raise mental health awareness, particularly in dementia and Alzheimer's. Here we have a very rare photograph, and we actually don't know if we are absolutely on point with this, but we surmise that this might be the erstwhile cathedral in Bhuvneshwar in the early 1930s. You can see Vivian de Silva in the top right, who was alive at this time, and his daughter shared this with us. There is a inscription there that says Virgo Immaculata Ora Pro Nobis, which can be found at the Our Lady of Health today. Is that what?
No, the Sodality Group's plaque.
The plaque can be found at Our Lady of Health in Kamal today. Then we'll move on to some of the ways that these neighborhoods function and kind of grew through community. Here we have, as you can see, in Kaval, a very bustling, very excitable crowd for the traditional Van dance in 1968. This was the annual bonfire night held every year on Boxing Day in the Pareto High School compound. And there were jam sessions, skits, live music, songs performed by residents young and old. And it drew visitors from all over Bombay. And there were Konkani songs, there were comedic skits. It was a real picture of cosmopolitan Bombay. Here we have the community with Hazel Rita Pinto at her in her building actually, all helping with the rose and the coconut scraping on the eve of her wedding in 1978. Rose is a Mangalorean wedding ritual where coconut milk and oil are applied on the bride and groom's hands. She says that everybody helped them carry the van, which is the Konkani grinding stone, to the passage because they were quite heavy. Here we have a typical image from engagement from Dhobi Talao resident Albert D'Souza and his fiancée Lynette Nobre's engagement, and the Goan spread. This is probably common in many of our homes, where it's cooked by a Goan who's also invited to work with the family for many years. Here we can see a very unique centerpiece at a wedding of Mahim born Vinay Rosa, Margarita Norona, and Colaba resident Jerome Lewis here at McDonald's in Bandra West. And their son Antoine Lewis shared with us that his dad was an aircraft engineer with Air India who worked with Air India until he retired, and he would accompany Prime Minister Indira Gandhi on all her flights. And his friend, who had also introduced him to his wife, had made this centerpiece for their wedding. We also see through our archive and the pictures that we've collected so far a general slice of Bombay and how people contributed or were informed by cosmopolitan life in Bombay at the time. So here we have some very rare photographs right from the 1800s of Vivian and Alvin De Silva shared of their ancestors. So this is their great grandparents at P. Gomez in the 1800s, their grandmother Marceline in the 1890s, and their father Vivian. And it really shows how people they didn't have personal cameras at the time, so they really made the effort to dress up and have their portraits taken. A typical outing in this next one of some neighbors from Kavel in the 1930s with their car. You can see a glimpse of life automotives at that time. And the idea that you would go all the way to Dadar or Juhu or Mud, those were considered far away places to have a picnic at the time. Here we have some fashion from the time. Monica de Silva Jimenez is wearing bell-bottom pants and a halter top in the 70s, and she most likely stitched her own clothing. She says she's never bought clothing before, and it gives us a look at how many of us have been taught to stitch and make our own clothes. It's such a portrait of the general community when we look at images like this in our archive. They used to go to Talk of the Town in Churchgate, which they would jive at, which eventually got replaced by Jazz by the Day. And also club life. Club life was a really big part of Bombay life. So we have Cabell residents Patrick Castro and Vivian Goddard being members of Bombay Gymkhana and contributing to wider life over there. You can see here she's dressed for a minstrel program, which now, in a moral sense, these things are very outdated, but it gives us a glimpse of what culturally, societally was acceptable around this time as well. And this was there were many esteemed guests at something like this, including the Femina magazine editor Fredi Talyar Khan. We look a little bit at the professions that people had at the time. So here is Vivian Goddard. She was a Cabell resident and a national India hockey player. And she played hockey for the national team in the 1960s. She worked also for State Bank, and she got selected for the India team in '66 following a camp at the National Institute of Sports. And then when she got, she was able to represent India again in January 1968, she was actually 3 months pregnant, and she ended up playing for the country while 3 months pregnant. And she didn't tell her coach. They only found out later, and they couldn't believe it. We also have, we have one musician that we're showing, but we all know that the musicians of South Bombay, they really came from these neighborhoods. They really contributed to Bollywood, to jazz from these neighborhoods. So we have Jose Simplicio de Souza here playing the cello, and this is a clipping from All India Radio's newsletter, The Indian Listener. And he later teamed up with Hindi film composer duo Shankar Jaikishan, arranging music for them. He was the secretary of the Bombay Musicians Association in the 50s, and he led an annual competition for instrumentalists, which is the feast on November 22nd, which is the feast of Saint Cecilia of Rome, the patron saint of music. And last for me is, we see a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. We know many teachers. We know how many women from our community have been part of it in education. And here she is with her first standard students at St. Sebastian Goan High School in Dabur. She began as a primary teacher in Goa, teaching at Our Lady of Agony in Kandolin, Little Flower High School in Kalangut. Came to Bombay, worked at Our Lady of Dolores, Holy Name High School, Antonio de Souza High School, before getting her job at St. Sebastian. And her salary went from 125 to 3,000 rupees, which were both princely sums at the time. Thank you from me. Jane will take it.
We have the final slide, which is on the contributions of the Catholic community from the Konkan in the South Mumbai neighborhood. The first one is government clerk. Here we have a photograph that has been shared with us. It's a facsimile of farewell address to Mr. Gaspar de Souza, shared by his daughter Genevieve de Souza. Gaspar was the father of Genevieve. His department was responsible for arsenal given to the military. During his tenure, he was credited with establishing the All India Arsenals Clerks Association, which later came to be recognized by the government. Much is not known, and Jenny couldn't really explain what her father did as a member of the Arsenals department. But in the farewell address, which you cannot see very clearly, it has been mentioned that Gaspar did facilitate pensions for orphans and the widows of men who worked for the military. His posting began in Pune and he took early retirement from Firozpur in Punjab before settling down in Goa, where he spent his retirement years as a typist. And he would do a lot of church material that he would type for the priests in Goa. The next is interesting national rescue operator, former Air India Managing Director Michael Mascarenhas. He found himself in the Gulf by what he calls sheer chance during a reshuffle at Air India. His role as Middle East Regional Director was to manage the airlines across 32 countries from Oman to Cyprus. He recalls receiving a panic call on August 1st, 1990 while living in Dubai, notifying him of an invasion of Kuwait announced by the Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. Mascarenhas and his team spearheaded Operation Aman Airlift, the largest airlift in the history of civil aviation, which brought Indians seeking refuge from Kuwait back to India via Jordan despite a complete lack of infrastructure. Air India at that time did not have an office in Amman. 116,000 people moved in 59 days over 451 flights. He says, I know the number by heart because I was on the runway in Amman for 59 days, 2 months. The 2016 Bollywood film Airlift, starring Akshay Kumar, is loosely based on his story. In addition to other key figures, Mascarenhas was also consulted for this film. The next slide. This is politician and social worker, Malabar Hill resident, and I'm proud to say he's also my uncle, Rocky Crasto, outside his home in Banganga Cross Lane. Crasto spent his early years in social service, which he furthered during his near 3-decade-long career in politics. He joined the Indian National Congress in 1974, working closely with former Union Minister Varghese Deora. During his 30-year-long political tenure, he served as ward president, taluka president, and joint secretary of the Bombay Congress Committee. He was also elected as corporator from Malabar Hill in the municipal corporation elections in the 1990s. Having been raised near the sacred Banganga tank, a temple steeped in Hindu legend and lore, and which is part of the Balkeshwar temple complex, Crasto developed a deep affinity for it. In his teens, he helped save a lot of people from drowning. When it fell into ruins and became polluted in the 1970s-80s, Crasto undertook the initiative to clean it up, often spending money from his own pocket. As corporator, he took on the work of rejuvenating and rebuilding the tank. Of course, that a Roman Catholic had restored a Hindu tank wasn't lost on the media, and a lot of media reports at that point highlighted this. And last but not the least, Dr. Kaki Kiran Parai's parents, freedom fighters and educationists. The power couple Cyprian and Alice Alvarez are seen here at their wedding day on August 26, 1941. Both hail from Mangalore and came to Bombay to pursue further education and to work. Soon after getting married, the husband-wife duo founded the Muslim Children's High School in Masjid near Paithoni. They simultaneously became involved in India's freedom struggle, joining the Quit India movement in August 1942. Already active members of the Indian Christian Nationalist Party, they also worked with Usha Mehta, who set up India's first radio station, the Congress Radio. Cyprian and Alice ran one of the radio stations out of their school and also came out with bulletins related to the freedom movement. While Cyprian was arrested first and served jail time between Worli and Arthur Road prisons, Alice initially managed to evade the police, and you must ask Dr. Kranti Farais about this story, because she served time at Yerawada Central Jail in Pune from 1943 to 45. Dr. Kranti was born a year later. Alice went on to become a corporator and later, along with her husband, started Jasmine High School in Mahim, which was renamed St. Aloysius Gonzaga High School, which they renamed after they relocated, and Dr. Kranti was also the principal of this school. Thank you so much. This is where we end our slides, but I do hope that many of you, and I'm sure some of you, definitely have connections with South Bombay and have friends and family who have roots in the Konkan. We would obviously love it if you all can direct them to us, and we would love to interview them and record their stories. Thank you again for this platform, Dr. Kranti.